3 weeks ago, I asked you, our audience, to ask any questions you may have about the last 10 months, this project, or anything in general. And I really appreciate everyone who submitted. There was lots of really great questions. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of capacity going through withdrawal. I'm still struggling through withdrawal, but it's time. I'm going to try to answer these questions as best as I can. Okay, so I had this idea that I would take you along with me on my day as I answer your questions as I go. But I realized that I don't really have anywhere interesting I need to go in my day-to-day. So just had therapy in a reflective headspace. I'm just going to walk around the area answering as many of your questions as I can. Can I please get one decaf Americano hot and then one iced decaf Americano? Bring your own keto meal. Beef and cream spinach and avocado. Okay, so first question. Do you still consider yourself as someone who has schizoaffective disorder? How has your identity shifted when your illness went into remission? So we're really getting right into it. I think that my identity has really shifted, and it's something I'm still kind of wading through and trying to figure out. I mean, I made a YouTube channel about living well with schizophrenia, and I think that my illness, schizoaffective disorder, did really become enmeshed with my identity because how can it not? You know, it just impacts your life in so many different ways. It really does start to feel like it's a part of who you are. And I think that there's many people who would argue that it is a part of who you are. And so it's been really interesting going through these past 10 months of having it not impact my life in really at all the same way, and kind of how that is subsequently informing a shift in my identity and who I understand myself to be. I think I do still identify as someone who has schizoaffective disorder because it is a part of me and my brain and stuff, and I think there's always going to be a bit of a susceptibility, I guess, to dealing with these issues again. But coming back to changing the name of our channel to Living Well After Schizophrenia, it's not really something that I consider to be too big a part of my identity. I'm wanting to make an actual full video about this topic, so that was just really grazing the surface, but hopefully that somewhat answers the question. The next question is, what are your macros? As in, how much fat, protein, and carb percentage did you start, and did your fat intake increase or decrease at all? Great question, and probably something we should clarify. So I actually started on I think it was a 1 to 1.5 ratio. And so what that ratio is the one, or the first number, is carbs and protein, and the other number, the 1.5, is fat. And 1 to 1.5 is actually more of a modified Atkins diet than a ketogenic diet, but that really worked well for me in the beginning. That said, I have had to tailor that at various points, especially going through withdrawal or when I'm sick or whatnot, where that ratio increases. And I'm actually currently on a 1 to 2.5, I think. So really high fat and really, really low carb and protein, just in an effort to help my body produce more ketones to kind of help me get through this withdrawal. So to answer the question of what my macros are, currently I'm aiming for about 60 grams of protein, which is pretty low. I'm really trying to stay on top of moderating that in an effort to get my ketones up right now, dealing with withdrawal. And then my carbs, net carbs, is 20 grams, and then fat, I'm aiming for 200 grams, but I often go over that even, especially if I'm doing exercise or whatnot. And again, those numbers are really for me specifically, and they're going to vary greatly from person to person based on body composition, based on your own metabolism, and all these other factors. So Nicole has actually helped me to figure out my macros and what is going to work best for me, and to adjust them as needed as we go along. And then the next question was just, how many net carbs do you aim for per day? And so that is something that has never changed. It has always been 20 grams net carbs that I've aimed for, and that's pretty standard for a medical ketogenic diet, using it for medical purposes. And now it's probably important to also clarify that when I'm talking about 20 grams of carbs per day, it's net carbs. So what that means is it's the amount of carbohydrates minus the amount of fiber and also sugar alcohols that may be in a food, which kind of helps you to have a little bit more carbs, mostly in the way of fiber. Oh, I regret an iced coffee. It's really cool. How has keto helped with all the different kinds of symptoms, like negative, positive, and cognitive? Have all of these seen improvement? I mean, I really don't experience any of those symptoms anymore. So yes, they've all improved, and kind of unbelievably so. I feel like saying that seems a little bit ridiculous to make an assertion like that. So I don't know, watch the progression throughout all the videos about how it has changed my experience of symptoms. But yeah, really, really improved. And that is something that medication never really could do. Yes, it helped manage my symptoms, but I still got breakthrough symptoms, and it never really even touched negative or even cognitive symptoms. And so that's probably the most marked improvement that I've noticed. Okay, how long were you in ketosis before you started feeling your symptoms go away? So I think it was maybe like a week, maybe 2 weeks into being in ketosis that I started to notice differences in my experience of my symptoms. They didn't like completely go away after 2 weeks, but that's kind of when I started to notice changes. And it's kind of been a gradual progression ever since then of my experience of my illness just getting better and better and less experience of symptoms. Next question was actually, how gradual was the improvement? Did you slowly feel better over several months, or were the benefits quite noticeable right away? So kind of both. They were quite noticeable right away, but again, as I said, it's kind of just been a steady, continuous improvement over these 10 months too, up until this withdrawal, but that's kind of an anomaly. How long ago was your last visual or auditory hallucination? I don't know. I think that those like really obvious marked symptoms were really the first to go. And so, yeah, I don't actually remember the last time I had a symptom like that. How has your mood been from the perspective of having bipolar type throughout the process of ketogenic diet? So yes, I have schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. So the bipolar mood disorder is a component of that. And I definitely have noticed that that is something that has really stabilized as well. I really struggled with fluctuations of depression, going through really difficult periods with the more depressed side of my mood, as well as periods primarily of hypomania, but at times mania too. And that just hasn't really been part of my experience. There's been a few times where I have been worried about being hypomanic because things are just feeling so good. But the difference is that it's been quite sustainable over these 10 months. And yeah, it's not really causing any problems or anything. I think it's just functioning in a way that is feeling good and that my brain and body are maybe supposed to. So yeah, it's definitely improved my mood as well. I think I talk a lot about the psychotic symptoms because those are maybe kind of the easier ones to measure. Mood seems a little bit more nuanced just in that everyone has fluctuations in mood, and so part of that is just being human. But the illness side of it, of bipolar, I think has definitely vastly improved as well. How much do you think it has helped having someone, Rob in your case, to go through metabolic therapies with you? It has really, really helped. I probably can't understate enough how helpful or maybe even important having support through something like this is. Because, it's kind of a choice that you have to make every day to engage in these lifestyle changes and choices and whatnot. And if you have someone going through it with you who can support you in those choices and also make those choices alongside you, it definitely makes it easier. Inevitably, too, there are going to be people in your life who maybe just don't really understand metabolic therapies as an intervention for your health, and that can be difficult to kind of navigate. And it has been helpful navigating that with someone, having gone through this with Rob. Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
I chose to answer this question here for a reason, and then I forgot. But this is where I proposed to Rob. This little pond. Actually, not right here, over there. But there was someone sitting over there, so, 4.5 years ago, proposed to you here. He said yes.
He was really nice.
Do you enjoy eating this way? Can you ever relax the diet once fully stabilized? I've never really been a person who derives like a lot of enjoyment from food. So I don't know, it's just kind of like, yeah, I just have to eat this way and whatever. But actually, like, I thought that I would have a bit of a hard time with the really high fat intake because that's always been something that I haven't loved. But the more your body craves it, I guess the more your body gets used to using it for energy, the more you start to crave it as well. And that has actually made me really enjoy it a lot more. And it's actually pretty rich and satisfying. And so, yeah, it is a kind of a nice way to eat. In terms of relaxing the diet once I'm fully stabilized, I think that is probably my long-term plan, to move more towards something probably more in line with paleo, where I will never go back to eating things like refined carbohydrates, sugars, all that sort of stuff. But, going back to eating maybe more fruits and vegetables and stuff, but sticking to kind of more the whole foods route. Next question was, do you ever get tired of eating high-fat meals? If so, how do you manage to continue? So like I said, your body just starts to crave it, and it just kind of is what it is at this point. Again, I think that maybe part of who I am, or part of my problem, is that I'm kind of a person who could probably just eat the same meal every day and be fine with that. But there is actually a lot of variety that you can explore while following this diet. My stepmom actually kind of took it upon herself to find out more about keto and cooking keto, and she's an incredible cook, but she's made Rob and I some incredible keto dishes that we have. And then we're like, whoa, this is incredible. Like, we should start trying to make this too. And so I think probably more me, because I do more of the cooking. I'm pretty unadventurous when it comes to branching out of what is in my comfort zone in terms of what I'm used to making. But we are learning that there is a lot of potential variety and a lot to enjoy following this diet too. It's kind of cool. There are a ton of online recipes for keto these days because it is increasing in popularity as a diet. Sometimes you have to adjust it a little bit to make it more in line with medical macros, but on the whole, yeah, lots to try. Okay, so actually the next question is, what online resources did you find for menu planning? Again, I'm not good at this, but Nicole has recommended to me actually the Keto Mojo website has a lot of really, really great recipes and lots of different kinds of recipes that are kind of in line with medical keto. So would definitely encourage you to check that out, the Keto Mojo website. I mentioned my stepmom finding keto recipes, and I think she uses perfectketo.com. Perfectketo.com? Yeah, perfect keto. I don't know. But really, if you just Google keto recipes, I'm sure you could find a lot of different things. Make sure you take a peek at what the macros are and maybe even calculate them yourself just to make sure they are in line with medical keto. But again, yeah, lots of great recipes out there. We actually have stuck primarily to 2 cookbooks, which I've shared before, which are just easy, simple keto meals. But yeah, again, you could find a lot of that and vastly more online too. Why aren't you answering any questions?
Nobody asked me.
What's your favorite thing about Lauren?
Oh, that would take me a long time to answer.
What have the last 10 months been like for you?
Pretty good. I'd say I'm in best shape of my life. I feel the best.
Say something.
Babe, say something is the worst thing to say.
Well, I asked you to tell me your favorite thing about me. Didn't want to do that.
I like you.
What's the thing you hate most about me?
Oh, we want to get into that here?
We just are in therapy. Might as well.
I'm not doing this.
What's been the hardest part about being on keto in the last 10 months?
I couldn't say. It's not that hard once you're in it, I think maybe it's finding new routines.
Yeah.
Finding, developing new habits. Maybe also we've kind of stuck to a lot of the same meals, which is maybe not the worst thing in terms of starting something like this and trying to like make it easy and
Dial it in.
uncomplicated and dialing it in. I guess it does get a little boring, and not in the sense that like we couldn't try other things, because when we do try other things, we're like, oh, this is great, we should try other things, and we have. But then I feel like we change things, we find something new, and then we do that thing all the time, you know? So probably just trying to incorporate more variety a little bit more organically.
I think maybe though that's, like you said, not a bad thing in terms of making a big lifestyle change like this, is trying to figure out how to simplify it as much as possible to kind of set yourself up for success or sustainability.
Yeah, keeping it simple.
Yeah. Okay, now what's your favorite thing about me?
I like your personality.
This is actually, I didn't fill you in, also the park where we came on our first date. And that's why I proposed to him here too. A year later, on the day. Is that too quick? Oh no. Did we rush into this?
Oh, we are.
Are you and Rob still eating sweeteners, or have you managed to cut them completely? No comment. Yeah, we're still eating like erythritol. What are those called? Sugar alcohols, yes. And again, I think it does kind of come down to what you can tolerate on an individual level, and if they affect you ketone-wise, or I guess mental health-wise at all. And I don't really think that they do. I think maybe more the problem with those kinds of products is like other ingredients in it, like palm oil, or I guess just the processed nature of it. So we're trying to cut out the processed foods, but we're still adding, erythritol to fat bombs or to various other things, just to kind of help with having sweet things. It's nice, and we're both pretty okay, I think, with tolerating it. So yeah, haven't cut that out. Something maybe interesting to note if you live in the United States is that allulose is increasing in popularity as a healthy sugar substitute. It's a sugar alcohol that is, I guess, healthier or better for you than even erythritol or definitely things like sucralose. But it's not available in Canada, so I cannot try it. But we did try something that had allulose in it, didn't we? What was it?
Carbohydrate.
Oh, yeah. So that's something else, is that we're like experimenting with like these like slow release carbohydrate gels for sport performance. Stick around to learn more about that in a future video, but it had allulose in it. So I don't know how that got into Canada. Don't come for me, customs. Do you cook different meals for your children, or do they eat keto too? How do you manage their nutritional needs? Yeah, so I've talked a bit about this. They don't eat keto. We make different meals for them every meal. But I'm struggling a bit with that because I don't feel great feeding them, closer to the standard American diet, the SAD diet, whereby there's like lots of carbohydrates and, less in the way of healthy fats and protein and whole foods, really. I think my kids are probably not the only kids out there who really gravitate more toward the processed foods and the high carbohydrate sweets and treats and stuff. And I think, I'm just really becoming more aware of the importance of changing that for them as early as possible. I think we probably would feed our kids what we eat, full keto diet, but something that is kind of unique about our situation is we only have our two older kids for 50% of the time. So, we don't have control over feeding them a keto diet every other week, which I think would be problematic in terms of switching between a more standard American diet and keto diet week to week. I don't know if that would be super good for their system. So we're trying to find some kind of happy medium where we are trying to reduce carbs, trying to cut out as much sugars and refined carbohydrates as possible, and trying to pull them closer toward as much whole foods and more protein and healthy fats as possible. I was skeptical of this intervention at first, but I have been absolutely blown away by your results. I'm so happy for you. It's incredible. Thank you. Do you have a plan for if you accidentally consume carbohydrates and start experiencing symptoms, like a PRN medication or something? The first experience you had with exogenous ketones made me think about how serious it could be to slip off the diet, especially being off of medication. Yeah, so I think that's a really important consideration. I think for me, if that ever happened, where I accidentally ate too many carbohydrates or whatever, got kicked out of ketosis for some reason, I think what I would try immediately is taking exogenous ketones to try to help myself stabilize with more ketones in my body, for my brain and my body. I would also immediately try to consume high quantities of fat to kind of regulate in that way. But if I was really struggling and it was to a point where I just couldn't handle symptoms and I couldn't wait for nutritional interventions or exogenous ketones even to take effect, I do still have some of my old medication. So I was taking lorazepam, but I think what I would actually take, and I still need to iron this out with my psychiatrist, but I think what I would actually take is what I used to use as a PRN if I needed extra medication, and that was Haldol. That's something that really just kind of acts pretty immediately for me in terms of reducing symptoms. It also kind of like completely wipes me out. But yeah, if it's like a really extreme dire situation where I really need that extra support, I would do that. I think maybe too, there's like this idea or assumption that if I get knocked out of ketosis, I will instantly become psychotic and have really bad symptoms. But I think that might be actually kind of discounting a lot of the healing that has taken place following this diet and using metabolic therapies over the last 10 months, whereby I don't really think that that would happen. I think that if I ate too many carbs or got kicked out of ketosis, it would be a much more gradual or like progressive kind of decline into symptoms. I think, yeah, it would start off with me just not really feeling very good. But if I completely switched my diet back to what I used to eat, I could see it devolving more into experiencing symptoms again. But yeah, there's this fear, I think, that it would just be this immediate plunge into full psychosis. And I just don't really think that that's how it would work. And then kind of along the same lines, the next question is, have you thought about what the steps are if you happen to start having psychosis again? I know it may be devastating, but shouldn't be the end. And yeah, I think it's probably important to clarify that because people, they're making assumptions about where I'm at in terms of making this change to living well after schizophrenia. I understand that it is probable that there are going to be fluctuations in my health going forward. I found something that works incredibly well for me right now, and I'm ecstatic about that. But I'm not at all opposed to needing to adjust that or make small or big changes in the future if necessary. You know, if I start to struggle again with symptoms, more than willing to explore other options that may be a better fit at that time. I hope actually that, the last video talking about how I'm experiencing withdrawal and plans for if symptoms increase and whatnot is kind of evidence of that my goal here is really just to figure out how to live as best and as well as possible. And so, yeah, super open to whatever that may look like and open to making adjustments as needed. Which of the options to measure ketones have you found more cost effective? Do you prefer one over the other? Which one would you recommend for a beginner? Yeah, so we actually have a whole video where we kind of go over and review all of the different kinds of ketone monitors or measurers that we've used. So we've used everything from urine strips. I haven't really actually used those very much. We just tested them out briefly because they don't really give the most accurate reading. And I think ideally you want something more accurate than that if you're doing it for medical purposes. But if you're on a tight budget, totally doable. The breathalyzer was also pretty inaccurate. It just kind of leveled off at the highest one and never gave me much more accuracy beyond that. But again, easier, kind of cheaper way to know that you're in ketosis. But my two favorite ones and ones that I continue to use and use every day are the Keto Mojo, which is the blood prick, and it measures your blood ketone levels as well as your blood glucose levels, which then also give you something called a GKI, glucose ketone index reading, which helps to give you a better understanding of where you're at on a therapeutic level too. Super, super helpful. Those are not bad in terms of cost, but each test strip, I think for the ketone ones are like $1. So it does kind of add up. But the one that I used the most probably and have enjoyed the most has been the continuous ketone monitor, because you just kind of put it on and forget about it for 2 weeks, but you get continuous readings of where you're at ketone level wise. And that's been really, really helpful in terms of getting real-time feedback about what affects my ketones and how. Totally understand that that is a pricier option. I think they go for about $100 per CKM. If you can afford that one, would recommend that one. We do have a discount code. It's in our description if you want to check those out. I think we also have a discount code for the Keto Mojo, because they're both things that I have used a ton and have been kind of instrumental in terms of this process. Felt awful yesterday. Day 2, round 2. So my question is how you manage sleep during your transition to medical keto, and if you noticed a difference in your quality of sleep before and after the transition to medical keto. So that's actually a good question, because it was something that was really impacted by starting medical keto. I shared a bit about how I just all of a sudden felt like I didn't need as much sleep, and it was a little bit difficult to fall asleep. And I was worried that this was kind of mania. And I'm still not really sure if that was part of it, but sleep definitely changed. And that was definitely something I had to stay particularly on top of, making sure I was kind of forcing myself to still go to bed at a decent time and get enough sleep. It did get better as I kind of worked through that initial period on keto, but in general, I am definitely finding that I don't need as much sleep as I did pre-keto. In terms of quality of sleep, I'm sure that that probably actually has increased, and maybe that is part of why I'm needing less sleep in general, but also things like naps. Like that used to be something that I did quite regularly and I just kind of needed. Part of that might have been sedation from my psychiatric meds, but yeah, that's not really something that I do anymore. And in general, I'm finding that I need less sleep, and it generally is better quality sleep too. I use a Whoop band to track my sleep, and we also have 8 Sleep, which tracks my sleep, and I also have a Garmin which tracks my sleep. So I've maybe been a bit obsessive of improving or optimizing my sleeping, because that is a big part of metabolic therapies. But yeah, it's definitely something that's changed, probably for the better, since starting keto. I see you are a runner, as am I. Do you think running has helped your mental health, and do you have a favorite race or distance? Ooh, I love a good running question. Absolutely, running has helped my mental health. Even before doing keto and metabolic therapies, I think that that was actually probably a really big part of my coping and maintaining wellness in terms of managing my illness. And then, do you have a favorite race or distance? Not really. I went through like a big ultra marathon trail running phase, and I think I'm kind of wanting to get back into that. I got more into road running once I had Teddy and was pushing the stroller and stuff, and the marathon was maybe what I was focusing on, but I don't know. Looking for the next race or distance to...
Or sport, triathlon.
Or sport, yeah, let's switch it up. I'm thinking about getting into triathlon. Throw in some biking and swimming as well. Do you think that if someone focuses only on the other metabolic therapies like sleep, exercise, and social connections, they can get an improvement in their mental health, even if they are unwilling to do the keto diet? I don't know if I'm able to do the diet. Yeah, of course. You know, all of these different interventions that we're exploring, exercise, sleep, social engagement, they're all contributing factors to improving metabolic health. And yes, I do think that the keto diet is probably a very primary one in terms of promoting mitochondrial metabolic healing. But absolutely, if you work on any one of those or all of those other metabolic therapies, I'm quite confident that it will also improve your metabolic health and thus your experience of your mental illness. Wrong shoes. How do you feel knowing what you know now about keto and how you spent the last 10 years missing out? We actually did a long form video about this. I think it's called My Life Could Be a Lot Different and So Could Yours. And I won't lie, there's definitely some difficult feelings around, my life could have been a lot different had I found the ketogenic diet and metabolic therapies earlier. Maybe I could have evaded or completely avoided a lot of the suffering that I experienced and struggle navigating my mental illness. But I think I'm kind of ultimately landing on a place of gratitude for having that kind of life experience. Yes, it was hard, and yes, I would probably choose not to have gone through it if possible, but I did grow as a person, and I developed things like empathy and compassion and maybe just even a better understanding of the human condition. Yeah, I think I'm where I am now because of all of that. And perhaps it prepared me to be able to move into this phase of my life where these interventions are really effective in terms of improving my quality of life and my experience of life.
The human condition is about suffering or anything like that. So it's like, well, if I wasn't suffering from this, I'd probably be suffering from something else, just like everybody's suffering. Life is suffering, so.
We'll just put that in. That's Rob's perspective on all of it. Life is suffering. Get over it. Go through it. Move through it.
You know, if you hadn't developed that understanding of suffering early on, there's a chance, well, I mean, you would develop that understanding of suffering later on in life. And maybe it's better to develop that understanding earlier on in life.
Yeah. I mean, I think, moving through that suffering and getting a really intimate understanding of that has set me up to kind of move through life in a way that feels better, more authentic, more connected to myself, I guess.
Maybe more grateful.
More grateful, yeah. My GP recommended I try a low carb, not necessarily keto, but diet to help with long COVID symptoms. I thought that sounded really woo-woo and the opposite of general nutrition advice, but I generally trust the guy, so I tried it anyway. After 2 months, I have way more energy, depression is significantly better, migraines aren't as bad, and I'm more clear-headed, gut is loads better, and chronic knee pain is vastly improved. So my questions are, how do you navigate all of the conflicting health and diet advice? Why is there so much conflicting advice? How do you know who and what to believe? None of this makes sense to me. I hear that sentiment completely, and I think I have struggled and kind of am still struggling with that difficulty, I guess, in navigating a lot of the conflicting advice and, figuring out how to make sense of it for myself. I actually asked this to Dr. Georgia Eid in the interview we did with her. Maybe I'll link to that. And I thought that she gave some really great insight. So check that out. But I think maybe what I'm learning is that, yes, there are going to be some things and, advice that could apply to everyone and that can help everyone improve their health and well-being. But generally, it's all going to be a little bit specific to each person. And really, what you kind of need to do is figure out what is going to work best for you personally and what interventions or changes or whatever you can make that are ultimately going to improve your personal quality of life and your own experience of life. And I think that is probably a bit of a personal journey to embark on. I think it's also been a little bit mind-boggling digging into why certain best practices exist and what has informed it. And oftentimes a lot of stuff around diet and nutrition is informed by, food manufacturing companies or, lobbyists that are trying to promote those interests as opposed to science about what is actually of most benefit for the human body and brain. I guess just having to have a degree of skepticism or a critical eye for these things and do your own research, find out what good science is saying, and then figure out what is going to work best for you. It's been really helpful using, I don't know what they're called, personal biomarker devices like the continuous ketone monitor, and we've tried continuous glucose monitors and like Whoop bands and stuff that just allows me to have more insight into the functioning of my body and what helps and hinders. And so maybe just to sum up this long-winded bit, feeling empowered to figure out for yourself what feels best for you. Stemming from your own experience, what recommendations do you have in working with a provider that isn't very knowledgeable or is resistant to adopting a ketogenic diet as a treatment for mental illness? So I actually have a whole video where I went over the fact that my own psychiatrist and GP really didn't know much about using keto to treat mental illness or keto at all, really. And so, I give more information about what that's been like in terms of kind of helping to educate them and also bring them on board with it and whatnot. But, they were still open to working alongside with me with it. So if your provider has any skepticism or, isn't really comfortable, there are resources out there that can help you navigate that. I will link in the description below to a really great, I think it's just a PDF resource that was created by Dr. Georgia Eid and shared on Metabolic Mind, which is kind of just an overview of how to talk to your doctor about using medical keto to treat mental illness. They also have a ton of information for clinicians, especially, that you can direct your clinician to go and check out, where they provide current research and a lot of just resources to help them navigate that. And that said, if your care provider still is just not willing to do it with you, but it is something that you are really interested in trying, it's totally okay to seek out another care provider who might be more willing to try it out with you in a safe and supportive way. Do you think that if you'd been on keto while pregnant and as a new mom, it would have been easier? If so, in what way? So actually, I don't really know a lot about following medical keto while pregnant. So I'm not really going to comment on that or suggest you do it, because I really don't know if it's safe or, I don't know. But that said, I really struggled during my pregnancy and postpartum. I have videos going into more detail about what this struggle looked like. And so maybe I'll link to those to hear more about that. But it was a really difficult period for me. And I do think that if I had this level of stability and difference in how I experienced my illness, I do think that that period would have been a lot easier or smoother, or maybe I could have coped or managed it in a better or healthier way. I think I'm really gaining a lot more insight into how connected my hormonal cycle is with my mental health, and probably, generally speaking, my metabolic health. And so, big disruptors in hormones like pregnancy and childbirth and whatnot are kind of huge disruptors of mental health. And I would venture to guess that having a better grip or better metabolic health definitely would have facilitated moving through that with more stability too. How likely do you think it is that some or all of your psychotic episodes, excluding whatever triggered the initial diagnosis or mania triggered by antidepressants, were in fact rebound symptoms caused by tapering too rapidly off of medication? Definitely not all of my psychotic episodes, because I have had psychotic episodes while I haven't done anything to my medication. But the absolute worst psychotic episodes that I've experienced have been right after generally just kind of completely stopping my medications. And I was always told that that was because I needed to be on medications, and that was just my illness and what it looked like when I'm not on antipsychotic medication. And that kind of made sense based off of the experience. But learning more about deprescribing and withdrawal effects from going off of antipsychotics too quickly or psychiatric meds too quickly, I'm learning that it was probably actually more so withdrawal-induced psychosis that was happening, because it was just so immediate and so bad immediately following an abrupt stopping of my medication. Obviously, retrospectively, there's no way to know for certain what caused the psychotic episodes, but I do wish that withdrawal effects were more understood by the mental health care system and mental health care professionals, and were better discussed with patients. Do you ever have fears that your symptoms may return? And if so, how do you deal with that feeling? I think maybe for the first bit of when I started to have a vastly different experience of my illness following medical keto, and it just almost felt too good to be true to be not really experiencing symptoms in the way that I used to. I think that there definitely was a big element of fear that this would be fleeting and that my symptoms would return. But I don't know, moving through this journey over the last 10 months, I think I'm finding myself more in a space now of just being really grateful for the good health and lack of symptoms that I'm currently experiencing, and learning, I guess, that I have the power or the ability to make changes in my life to work on improving my quality of life and my experience of life. And so I think it's maybe just been a really empowering process. I think I know now on some level that if symptoms do return, or if I do start to struggle with symptoms again, I have it within myself to navigate that and to help myself work through it, and to, again, work on finding some way of, making that experience better for myself. So maybe just my perspective on my illness has changed to one where, okay, these symptoms are a challenge that I can face and I can figure out how to navigate in the best way possible. Okay, so there was quite a few questions asking if I'm going to go back to school now that I'm feeling really stable and more capacity and whatnot, or just general questions about the future. So what are your plans for the future? Now that your symptoms have resolved for the most part, do you see yourself returning to school? Or I'm curious if you're considering returning to college. So I think that maybe I'm in a space right now of just kind of wanting to relish in a newfound sense of stability. I think that that is something that I and Rob have kind of been craving for a long time. Really just kind of trying to get our footing in this new experience of life. I know this all said, it is a little bit uprooted right now anyway, because I'm going through withdrawal and that has been difficult. But on the whole, still trying to get a grip on what to do with my increased capacity, or how to step into that new way of living. I think maybe in terms of like going back to university, I got a little bit jaded about academia. So I don't know if I want to pursue that route anymore, but I'm excited about what the future could hold or what I could pursue going forward. I don't know yet though. What proportion of schizophrenia or schizoaffective sufferers do you think would be motivated to seriously attempt this metabolic therapy if presented with a change in health, alertness, contentment, and present in your lifeness, non-depersonalization or derealization that you've experienced? I think that maybe that's been a bit of a difficult element of going through this experience of just like almost an undescribable change in my experience of my illness and subsequently my experience of my life. Having experienced that tremendous transformation, it's difficult sometimes to understand why there's aversion or hesitation, I guess, to try it for other people who may be experiencing similar difficulties or struggles with their mental illness. I do understand and I empathize with the fact that it feels really big and hard, and it also feels big and hard to engage in that level of hope of, kind of getting your hopes up about something and the fear of it not panning out. I guess just to touch on the question, having gone through how much it has changed my experience of my illness and my life, I absolutely believe that if other people knew or understood that shift that could be possible, they would absolutely be able to commit to making the changes necessary to improve metabolic health. And then there was a second part of this question, in brackets, they said, and offered an affordable package, source of keto ingredients, recipes and medical supervision to monitor health, lifestyle, and realistically taper off meds. With the effects, including on your productivity, do you think this would be a cost-effective alternative pathway the health or social security system should offer? Example, offering diagnosed people a 1-year trial. That is a big criticism or concern that people have brought forward, that a lot of these interventions or changes just don't feel accessible or are not accessible to people in various life or socioeconomic circumstances. And so absolutely, if we could decrease barriers to using this as a medical intervention, and if we could prescribe it as a treatment, I definitely think that not only would it be vastly more effective than how we're currently providing treatment for people with mental illness, but I think it would also end up being a lot more cost effective too. So if you're a policymaker watching this, you know what to do. I think though that, that is a big driver of why I'm sharing this publicly and why I'm choosing to continue talking about this, because I do think that the more we can understand how effective this intervention can be, I hope that the more our medical system and social security policies and whatnot will catch up to that and try to adapt that in terms of what they offer people in the way of support as well. So thank you so much for watching this video, and also a really big thank you to everyone who submitted questions for this video. It was really cool getting to kind of have a conversation with you all about a lot of these topics. Something else that I'm really excited to share with you all is that we have started a new support community, specifically around metabolic therapies for mental disorders. The idea is that this is going to be a support community where people who are using metabolic therapies can come together to kind of discuss their experiences. I think that this is going to be a really helpful resource for anyone who is looking to try out or even learn more about metabolic therapies for mental disorders. And so if it's something that is of interest to you, make sure to check out the link in the description below, or I will also pin a comment with a link to join the community. Now that said, we do still also have our schizophrenia peer support community. So if metabolic therapies are not feeling like a good fit for you right now, or if you also want to join a peer support community that really focuses on the experience of psychosis spectrum illnesses, that is also an option. And there's a link in the description and the pinned comment as well to join that peer support community too. So thank you so much again. And as always, wishing you and your loved ones good health. We'll see you in the next video. Bye. No, for real, it's actually like really amazing to be out in nature all the time. I think that's also part of, maybe I didn't touch on that with running, is that, you know, being outside, being active outside is also a big component of what has helped me with my mental wellness journey. Okay, bye.
She's saying it's like a social connection to nature, an experience.
Ooh, I mean, if you want to get all spiritual about it, yeah, maybe. Okay.
I think they're going at it.
Definitely, hey? Okay. Well. Don't know where it was. I'm flustered.